So this was over the weekend. Boy, it's really interesting to see what this show has been bringing to you guys for the last year and a half. 2 years if you include the Jake show that predated this. It's really interesting to see a bunch of our issues being covered by the National Press Corps, and in this case, even Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. So pull this up,
Things
Dawson.
that the Republicans were too afraid to say in Minnesota. Especially this pedophile stuff. It's just like, there were so many Republicans who were like, oh, we shouldn't go out there and say it like that. But it's like, it is what it is. The Democrats protect the pedophiles in this state more than they protect the children. And they're trying to mutilate children. They're trying to screw over parents. And so, yeah, I mean, the fact that it's nice that it's finally getting the attention that it deserves. But this is the kind of crap that should have never happened in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so this is Elon Musk asking Community Notes. I don't know Community Notes well enough to understand how it works, but I got a comment about it. So he goes, is this true, Community Notes? And it's a fact check. Yes, Tim Walz signed a bill that removed anti-pedophile language from Human Rights Act. And I don't know, for some reason the Community Notes are gone now. It used to be on the bottom, and the Community Notes, from the best I could tell, wasn't actually accurate.
So if they're removed, that just means that they were deemed inaccurate after getting checked.
It was about 66 2/3% accurate from last I saw. So we do have the story, and I was tweeting at him, but not that I really can get the attention of Elon Musk, which would be fun if I could.
You never know.
Why can't they do that? We literally have articles about this stuff, and they're going to frickin' outspoken editors. Who are these people? Get some Minnesota
this came across his, I guess, desk in some regard, so he put this out there. I don't know who these people are, but they're probably in agreement with us. And then it's like, well, how do we validate this thing? So, I signed up for Community Notes. I've never done it. Once again, I don't really understand the process works, but I want to get this information out there. So I started tweeting about it because, we pretty much broke the story. What ended up happening, let's pull up this at actionforliberty.com. I wrote this back. This is actually the final article on it. We wrote this probably back in March originally. But on May 2016, only one Democrat legislator in the state of Minnesota had the courage to break free from the grasp of the Metro Democrat bosses and vote against the dangerous gun control pedophile bill. Only one. The party of JFK has turned into a lunatic cult where children are paraded in front of overtly sexualized adults and capable of receiving genital mutilation surgery. And those opposed to these insane ideas, they're labeled as hate groups. The Gun Control and Pedophile Bill, SF 2909, also known as the Judiciary and Public Safety Omnibus Bill, is an unconstitutional multi-subject 522-page disaster legislation. It institutes red flag gun seizures and universal background checks, and it also amends the Minnesota Human Rights Act to make pedophilia a legitimate sexual orientation. We broke the story on Thursday about the bizarre pro-pedophilia language. The Minnesota corporate media has ignored the story, and Democrat legislators shrugged it off as not a big deal. But the pro-pedophile language affects Minnesota's unfair discrimination practice and would now allow the sexual attachment of children by adults to be considered a protected class. All right, click on that link there, Dawson. Let me specify, and for people that don't know about this issue, let me tell you what exactly happened and why Tim Walz signed this and made this into law. In the Minnesota Human Rights Act, which I think was passed, it was many decades ago, there was a provision in the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and this is in the second paragraph. It said, sexual orientation does not include a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult. Wonderful language, right? Like, who would be opposed to that, right? That was in the language, because someone could argue, I have a sexual orientation where I enjoy looking at pictures of minors. So they want to put into law that that's not a legitimate sexual orientation. Now, why does that matter? Because there are certain protected rights in the Minnesota Human Rights Act. And so you can look at it scroll down there. It's unfair discrimination practices 363A-08 through 19. So just to paraphrase, if you're a protected class in the Minnesota Human Rights Act, an employer cannot refuse to hire you or discharge an employee who is of a certain sexual orientation. A property owner can't refuse to sell, rent, or lease property to you. A private company can't refuse to sell goods and services to you. And a school or college can't discriminate against you for the full, quote, full utilization of benefits from any educational institution. Okay. So, do you understand the Minnesota Human Rights Act said sexual orientation does not include a sexual attachment to children? What the Democrats did is they struck out that language. They struck it out. So it's no longer the Minnesota Human Rights Act. So in other words, if you argue your sexual orientation is an attachment to children, right? That is a legitimate orientation now. And the only way for us to say it's not is to continue to have that language in the bill. Why? So here was our big question when this passed. Who on earth was advocating to remove that language? Where did that come from? And this was Stinky Finky that authored it.
Mm-hmm.
The one transgender. It's a dude who's dressed up as a woman in the Minnesota House, authored this bill. And by the way, Republicans amended it back in, and this is where the community notes got it wrong. They said, well, it actually was added back into the bill. But that's false because I think it was Harry Niska had this amendment. It got voted unanimously on the floor in favor because Democrats didn't want to go on record directly on that issue. And it got stripped out in the conference committee. And so when it got its final vote, which, by the way, was a multi-subject bill, it's against the Constitution, it had gun control and pedophilia language in it. And so it went back and it got voted, and Tim Walz signed that into law. So essentially, Tim Walz took out specification in Minnesota Human Rights Act that pedophilia is not is not a legitimate sexual orientation. Right? Who the hell's advocating for it? What loonies on the left? And we wanted to break this story, but we couldn't validate it. But it looked like some pro-pedophile person on Facebook was messaging Senator Nathan Wiesenberg, like admonishing him for speaking out against this thing. I think this person was also like another. Now, we couldn't validate if this is a real person, but it looked like it to us. And we asked the guy who wanted to come on a show and advocate for pedophilia. Now, once again, if you act on pedophilia, it's against the law. You cannot harm children. Don't mistake what I'm saying here. That is still against the law. But if you have that open sexual attachment to it, you should not work in a school because, I don't know, maybe you act on it. And maybe we should know who has that proclivity. And they should not be anywhere near a school. And according to the Minnesota Human Rights Act, because of Tim Walz, that is no longer forbidden as a sexual orientation. Now, we don't know how the courts decide this down the road because that's what would end up happening. All I know is it was specifically, expressly written in the Minnesota Human Rights Act that it is not a sexual orientation, and Tim Walz took that out. So if you want community notes, Elon Musk on this issue, there it is right there. No one follows this more than us. We're on top of it. We follow legislature, and that is extreme. And we never got an answer. The press just ignored it. The Democrats acted like this is pointless language. You know, I think they were saying like it gives a stigma to, you know, the homosexual community. But it's like, don't you want to make sure that isn't a sexual orientation? Aren't the LGBTQIA plus going, yeah, let's keep the pedophiles out of here. Let's not have that but they don't. It's the LGBTQIA community that want to get rid of it. So I have to ask, for what? Because we do know that there are people that think pedophilia is okay. I remember growing up in the 90s, you knew about this organization, NAMBLA. South Park had many episodes on NAMBLA, National Association of Man-Boy Love Associations, or something like that. National Association of Man-Boy Love Affairs. I don't know. There's two A's. One of those A's is association, I assume, right? Freaking crazy. So there are people that are open. Now, they've kind of, since the 90s, kind of gone into hiding, but this thing surfaced up in a bill. So there you go. That's the truth. You heard it right here. Last issue. So I get fired up on that issue because no one in the media reported it. It was like us.
Well, and it's insane. If they're advocating for the language, it's like, at what point are they going to advocate that a pedophile, their actual actions are not against the law? Like, exactly. I genuinely think that's the direction that it's going towards.
That's exactly.
Like, why else would you advocate for them to not be called pedophiles and be allowed to be around kids in schools? Yeah, crazy.
And it's like, Bridget, it's like, can't we just agree that that is just completely wrong? Like,
well, yeah, of course.
Listen, I got a little empathy. If you get your jollies from children, that sucks. No one would want that curse, right? But if you do, you really need to be segregated from the population. You can't be anywhere near children, right? And you should allow people to discriminate against that. And certainly if someone acts on it, you do have to lock them away. And I don't even know how you sort this out, because if someone's got that proclivity, can they suppress that? That sucks. That really sucks. Like,
they got a town in Arkansas full of pedophiles. You ever heard about that? They got all these, like, the ones that are free. They all move into a town together, but the neighboring town is like, we don't like this because our kids can't go to the park, and they're all worried about their kids. But I don't know if that's the right answer. If you just send all the pedos into one little area, because I mean, but that's the thing. Anybody who does anything physical to a child, they should be in prison for life, or just get the death penalty, because
you have to be segregated from the population 100%.
Yeah. And
so if you have that proclivity and you're open and honest about it, and that really sucks, and I really don't know what to do with that, because can someone suppress that?